Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special TechRaptor Impressions semi-review discussion, not a full formal review. My name is Christian Buckley. I'm the social lead here at TechRaptor. Joining me is Pokemon expert, not master, maybe. How's that? I tried
You
master
remembered.
before.
Yeah. Expert is good. I think expert I vibe with more than master. I don't want to
Okay,
make any claims that then someone will turn around and smack me down in a doubles battle.
fair enough. Andrew Stretch, the man on the review for Scarlet and Violet. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good, thanks. Tired. Been playing a lot of Pokemon this weekend.
Yeah, I have as well. I finally started it. It was a very hard waiting through the day after we did our last initial recording, which you can check out for day one impressions. Yeah, I think you were right. I've been having a good time with it. I'm curious to hear
hmm
about what the experience has been like for you now that you've beaten the game. You've seen credits, you've done endgame stuff.
In
And
credits, I've listened to Ed Sheeran's song again.
oh
It's all
boy.
good.
First thing I want to ask you, as a very basic top level thing, and again, there's probably going to be some spoilers in this discussion if you are sensitive to that. Total playtime, like when you saw your finale, either becoming the champion or credits, whatever comes first.
Credits roll for me was about, I want to say 25 hours, 26 hours.
Okay.
Some of that was inflated a bit. I spent some time mucking around in the multiplayer and getting some guides out. But yeah, probably about that. I probably could have spent some more time leveling up my team. There was a few rounds in the Elite Four that were cycling between revives and heals and revives and heals as I
Mhm.
kept bringing out an ace to smack down the champion.
And I can relate to that because, like you said in your impressions, and thankfully one of the guides you had about the structure of things, like the hidden order that the game has. It's like it's an open
Mhm.
world, go where you want, but not actually.
Yeah,
Uh, I decided to do the Fire Starfall first, the Starfall Street raid, whatever it was.
yeah.
And let me tell you, I did not have a water Pokemon on my team. I had a Knackley, the little Salt Rock
Yeah,
guy, and I was like, oh, he'll do okay against fire.
that'll be fine. Yeah.
It was at least half an hour of revives and heals. I ran out of all my heals on that thing because
I was gonna say if you headed there first, chances are you were like what, 10 levels under as well?
thankfully he was a level 20. So I was going up against
Okay.
the car Pokemon. It was like level 26. So I was like
Yeah,
close
so
enough.
5 levels under.
Yeah, but like I was still struggling. And I respect that the game
Mhm.
lets me make that mistake. So that was a really
Yeah.
positive thing for me, even though it was painful. What are your general thoughts on the way that these stories progress and the resolutions of them? Because I think they do make a very strong first impression, like we talked about already.
I think that it's great that it's kind of like they took what people would find comforting, people would find safe, like, hey, go fight gyms. That's immediately a buy-in for any previous player. I like what they did with the Starfall Street for a good way to push the new mechanic, the auto battles, the let's go mode where you can just walk around with your Pokemon. And then for the Titan Pokemon, I think that the Titan Pokemon storyline was the strongest for me because of how far are you with the Titans?
I've done two, so I've learned
Okay.
the motivation behind Arvin, and
Yeah.
it did. You
I
were
told
right.
you it's a hook that
Yeah.
gets you in. When you have that first Titan Pokemon encounter and then like the screen fades to black and then he's like, "Ah, yes, here, eat up." And
Mhm.
he's like, "What's going on? Is he a bad guy? Is he?" It's like, "No, he's just a really fantastic guy.
Yeah.
He is a good dude."
Which is surprising, right? Because I feel like something I've noticed also is that this game's cast of characters is not super binary the way Pokemon tends to be in the past, where it was either this kid's a little jerk or this is an overcompensating best buddy. You know,
Mhm,
everybody feels like
mhm.
they have some sort of depth to them, even if it's
Depth,
not
yeah.
super deep, but comparatively, right? Like Nimona, I think is a really strong friend rival so far. And Arvin, I was like, okay, upperclassman, this guy thinks he's the hottest
Oh,
thing
shit.
since a Charizard.
Since
And
Sliced Fido.
sure. And he had a very strong resonating scene with his little buddy.
Mhm,
So I appreciate
mhm.
that. I love it.
What's kind of frustrating for me in the biggest aspect is when you go open world, it can be so much harder to deliver a story.
Hmm.
And you do get that story like when you're at the Titan Pokemon event, you get that story with Arvin. But then the rest of the game, where the fuck is Arvin? You'd go through Eterna Forest in Diamond and Pearl and you would meet that like one-off grass trainer that would then come back later, or you would enter a new town or enter a town that had nothing to it, like Florama,
Hmm.
um, and there would be the Team Galactic grunts, like bullying the guy for honey, or the Valley Windworks and stuff like that. I have been missing a bunch of that. The story has been really good where there is story, but when there is no story, you're kind of just out on safari. You don't bother talking with anyone or anything.
It's not a problem. It's a problem that Breath of the Wild suffered, where there was so much in these cutscenes and stories and memories that you could find that it felt like disjointed because it was like, okay, well, I learned
Mhm.
this one and then I learned a beginning one 10 hours later. So, just from conversations with my friends as we're both playing this game, they got a dialogue piece from, I think, Penny is their name,
Yeah,
the kid who's
the
getting bullied.
girl with the Eevee on her back. Yeah,
Yes. They got a dialogue from her from doing one of the star raids, and I did a different one and got the same dialogue. So because there's no like voice acting, because it's very basic, those text boxes just have to get triggered when it's like, oh, this is the second one you did. That's the dialogue you get. It's not like fully
yeah.
location based. So I do think that's a fun benefit where Breath of the Wild suffered. Here, it's not really that much, but I do see what you mean. Of it feels isolated.
It's just like if you weren't present for where the story could only be delivered in such a vast open world. There's no choke points to be like, well, the player is going to be here. They're going to be here at this point. This is what story we can give them.
Hmm.
Um, so kind of just it feels like an overcorrection for story. It went from way too linear, and especially the last couple of games have been quite fairly criticized for being too handholdy, having Hop just absolutely drag you along, or how in Sun and Moon, I know people definitely were not fans of how much hand holding and linearity there was there.
Hmm.
But this is like, well, it's so open, but I'm kind of missing that added story.
The performance is definitely noticeable, but the thing is, it's like consistently unstable that I get adjusted to it after like the second hour. But it's definitely a problem. Does it get worse at any of the later game areas? I know you can really go anywhere whenever you want, but were there any big moments that were like, "Ooh, that's rough"?
No, it's not like there's a Kokiri Forest moment where it's just like, oh, like I've got to go back to this area. This area sucks. As you said, it's like a consistent, if it was running fine, running fine, running fine, and then dropping to 10 frames per second, I think I would have a much larger problem with it.
Hmm.
But it seems to just be that the game runs at a consistent 27 to 29 frames per second. Like it's enough to be like, okay, but yeah, it's not enough to completely pull you from the experience. But no, it is definitely a problem, whether that's a problem with scope or with the engine or with the limitations of the Switch or inexperience with optimization. At this point, anyone could point the finger anywhere. I do think that people also have a fair point, is that Game Freak can publish this and it's the number one seller in the UK, or for, wherever it's sold. It's sold shit tons.
Like it's worth
And
mentioning,
so,
Pokemon is the highest grossing IP of all time, and
mhm.
like the current system they have is the reason they got there. As a longtime fan, I don't see it changing, but I do hope that we see this addressed with some patches in the future or something because I fully believe from games I played on Switch, I think this could run at probably at least 30.
Oh, definitely. It's just it doesn't,
Yeah.
for XYZ reason. It's so strange. Instead of us getting a DLC at 3 months, a DLC at 3 months, and then we're doing the waiting game, like, let us have a DLC at 6 months, a DLC at a year, and like use that time that you're not working on that DLC, either spin up a second team, like, I know, big service games like Destiny has their team that's actively working on whatever new DLC is going on, while their base team is working on the next game.
Mhm.
um there's something's going wrong. I think everyone has fantastic ideas about what's going wrong, and some people may be entirely correct, and some people may be swinging way out of left field.
Mhm.
But something is going wrong.
It's the way that if these issues weren't here, if it was a solid 30, same art style, same resolution, no bugs, I would be talking about this thing nonstop online. I'd be telling all of my friends who've
Mhm.
ever been curious, who are like, Pokemon, I never played it as a kid. What's the hype? Is it just nostalgia? Like, I would be screaming from the
Yeah.
rooftops for them to play this game, but I'm not because I know they'll hit me with the, why are you accepting this? You know, because
Mhm.
from the early hours, and I'm sure you can speak to this more, this is so ambitious. This feels like a genuine step forward for the franchise. It's just marred down by these issues, right?
Yeah, the like to go from I do mention it in my review to go from Route 1, which is traditionally you're going to get a bug, maybe two bugs, a bird, and a land mammal. And that's kind of the variety that you get for Route 1. Before I'd even gotten off Route 1 in this game, I'd caught 30 unique Pokemon and got to see them interacting, with water, going swimming, hopping up onto the land, hiding through the grass. There's a forest area later on where pineco are. To find those pineco, you need to look up in the tree. They won't just ground spawn. You've got to think, where the hell would a pinecone be? Oh, look up.
Mm-hmm.
That level of population, like, I chastised the story for kind of being few and far between and like keeping me separate, but the world feels lived in by Pokemon. That's so cool.
I think the stretches between towns also feel, you know, reminiscent of older games where you have some trainers peppered through the whole thing. But
Hmm.
there's usually an interesting thing between most of these towns, right? Like I'm thinking of I don't know the name, but like the Olive Town to
Hmm.
the town with like the tiered waterfall system. Uh, Giant windmill between there,
Yeah.
and there's no reason for those to be there outside of it's making the world feel more realized and more visually diverse. There's a couple items you can get there, but they did a really good job at making this landmass interesting. Like you said, it's not just
Hmm.
flat, which Arceus, it was before the place got settled. So lore
Yeah.
wise is an excuse, but it's there's so much to praise for what is being done in this game. It's just unfortunate that this is the way it came out, I think. Something that we didn't have a chance to talk about too extensively on the initial impressions video was multiplayer, specifically online multiplayer. I put that thing through the ringer in my play
Hmm.
session. I did 3 player online, I did 4 player online, I did raids, I did open world stuff. I was as surprised as you sounded with how it worked. Spawned in Mesa Goza and then went off on our own ways. Hey,
Hmm.
there's a Terra battle here. We're gonna summon everybody. We'll do this one and get back to what we're doing. And it's pretty seamless, and loading is not that long. The thing that was tricky was when we brought in the 4th player. There were issues at that point where we tried loading into some Terra raids. A couple worked, and then one of them it wasn't showing up for one of our party members, and then one of the games crashed and we all got booted back to our own worlds. So I don't know if that was like a local issue, if it's the fact that a couple of us were doing Starfall Street on like 2 different locations on the map and it was too much, but considering the issues the rest of the game has, I was pleasantly surprised with how the online multiplayer works.
Yeah, that's an absolute so much fun. When I was playing on launch day local, to be able to be like, yeah, everyone go off, do your thing. And there would be a few times that I'd be walking across the road and I'd see something kind of moving weird in the distance.
Hmm.
And I'd get closer and be like, oh, it's this person.
Yeah.
They're just there. That's
Hmm.
awesome. That's so cool. And yeah, being able to just instant hop into terror raid battles,
Hmm.
um, it's just nice. It works. It's one of those few times that Nintendo Online just kind of works.
It just works. So, looking at post game, this is a road that is far ahead for me. You can be as spoiler as you want to be here. Scope wise, what are we looking at? Is it something that hangs with the best of them?
I'm always looking for a good post game in Pokemon. Technically, all of those legendary ruination Pokemon you can find in the main game, you can find in post game. If you want to have the shrines that they come from be revealed on the map, after getting all the gym badges, you can take all of the history classes, and there'll be like a little story subplot with the history teacher where she'll explain the backstory of these Pokemon and why they're Chinese, which is, a really neat thing. So there's that. There's like a new kind of like battle tournament that you can go to in the academy, and then there's also you can go and revisit and rematch with each of the gym leaders, and they'll have like a new tip top, super powerful team.
Very
You
cool.
can also head back into the end game area, and if you happen to go to the location where the final part of Endgame took place and walk around on that floor, there's a special legendary Pokemon that you can encounter and try to catch. But I won't say more about that because that's big spoilers.
Now that you've seen them all, you've played them all, what is the best Pokemon game released in the last 12 months? Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, Legends Arceus, and now Scarlet and Violet.
I think immediately Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, fantastic games. Fourth generation is like my favorite, but it's not gonna be on this list, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because of the classic format. I'd say between the two, really, because of I'm someone who gets really into games for story. I still think I would have to lean towards Legends Arceus because of the story it crafted, the history of the Hisui of the Sinnoh region that it built up, um, allowing you to interact with all of those Pokemon in such a fun, unique way, and the way that it turned the paradigm on its head to be like, you're not a battler, you're not a trainer, you're a researcher. Like, go research, have fun. They turned Pokemon into a stealth game somehow.
Yeah.
I don't quite know it, but I love it.
Mhm.
But Scarlet and Violet are a really close second. Open world was fantastic. You know, it sucks that everything runs at 28 frames per second. Being able to play multiplayer is so much fun and so simple, and it works. You know, it makes it the Pokemon that I've been dreaming to have since I first booted up Pokemon Red and was like, oh, I wish I could like walk around with other people in this world.
Well, great to hear. We'll see what evolves from this game and Legends in the future on hopefully new hardware. Until then, you can check out Stretch's review of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which should be going up around the same time as this video. Any other stuff you want to shout out before you sign off?
I'm looking forward to the DLC because that'll be cool. Lots of fun things already teased for that. So can't wait. I'll be back then.
Yes, and in the meantime, if you're continuing your journey, techraptor.net, lots of guides that will be linked in the description, the guide hub to help you out because there are a lot of things the game does not tell you. I will say you can check out us on TikTok at TechRaptor. Had a few video versions of those guides uploaded on there if you prefer bite-sized little hits of how to get some information for your playthroughs. But in the meantime, you can stay tuned here on the YouTube channel for the next episode of the podcast. There was a recent upload of an interview with Freya from God of War Ragnarok, Danielle Basutti.
Ooh.
You can check that out as well. Here's what she had to say about working on a game of the year. But that's it for TechRaptor. We'll be back in the future. Until then, enjoy your Pokemon adventures.
Go catch 'em all.